Today's episode is sponsored by the Thumb Gummy, a simple but powerful teaching aid designed for band students and their teachers. If you've ever taught beginners or even students a few years in who still struggle with their hand position, you know how much time can be lost with the same reminders over and over again. Thumb Gummy was created to fix that problem. It gives students a gentle guide for where their hand should go so they play more comfortably and with better technique. That means fewer bad habits, less frustration, and more progress in every rehearsal. Teachers tell us they spend less time correcting posture and more time actually teaching music. And students gain confidence because their instrument feels easier to play. Thumb Gummy is trusted by educators across the country, and it's available for trumpet, trombone, clarinet, and more. To learn more or find a local music store that carries it, visit thumbgummy.com. My good friend Trent Austin started Austin Custom Brass so many years ago. You can call him at 816-410-0826. They ship all over the world. They have a shop in Kansas City, Missouri, and they really are an amazing sponsor of this podcast. They do trumpets, trombones, euphoniums, tubas, mouthpieces, and more, all the way from the beginner to the professional. Austin Custom Brass has worked with thousands of brass players from around the world. You can check them out on www.austincustombrass.biz. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. This is episode number 293. I'm here with old friend Dan Austin, who's been on a couple episodes already. We did a short episode at Midwest. That was episode 226. Dan, what do we talk about at Midwest Live? Do you remember any of that?
A little bit. I was running on like no sleep. I drove through the night to get to Chicago. We talked a little bit about the start of my composing career. We talked a little bit about like band repertoire and things I was doing at Midwest and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I remember.
That was fun. I did like 20 episodes within, or 20 conversations within a couple of days. It was like kind of a whirlwind of meeting a lot of people. And it's funny when you meet somebody online and then you see them in person, it's like they're the same person. It's like you know them already.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I love Midwest. Like, you know, I had never gone. It was on the bucket list, and now that I've gone, I will go every year. It's just so cool. It's just so nice to meet everybody, talk to everyone, network. You know, it's just such a great vibe.
Yeah. And before that, we had done an episode on, which is my best artwork yet, episode 122 of like Canadian band repertoire and band director fitness. So there's like a, I don't know, whatever. So if people want to check that out, those are good episodes too. But today we're going to kind of focus on four of your pieces, but also talk about like the band director and composer journey, so to speak. So what's something just as a band director right now that you're working on improving, getting better at as a band director?
Well, I mean, there's always stuff I'm working on. One of the biggest things I'm working on right now is my conducting, to be honest. I'm not a trained conductor, and I hit a point sometimes with the kids where I want them to do something and I'm not sure how to get them there.
Mm.
So that is something I actively work on all the time. And you know, the intricacies and all the things that go into it are so much more complicated than I would think. So that's something that I'm working on. I'm always working on finding the best repertoire to fit the group that I have, to figure out sort of what is the best balance for the strengths, the weaknesses, what things are going to teach the skills that I want to teach, what messages am I trying to send. That is something that I'm always actively working on with the students. And then like I want to make sure, like, I'm a realist about how this works. This is a community for these kids, right? Like, music is important. It's 100% important, but there's a good group of them that are there because they love the community. They love hanging with each other. I want to make it as engaging and interesting for them as possible while still doing the music side, right? So it's finding that balance of being really actively involved in a community with the kids, create an environment where you know they feel important, but also teach them music as they go. So like those are kind of ongoing things that I'm always working at there.
And those are great. I mean, that's awesome. The rep thing is an ongoing thing at all times, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And there's so much repertoire out there. And then you have to find a balance between the old and the new. You've got to find, you know, you have your go-to pieces that work, but you know, you want to constantly be trying to find the best music for the kid and trying to create the best, you know, music you can, but also in the appropriate way. It's like
Yeah.
it's easy to overprogram or underprogram. It's easy to stick with the same composer over and over and over again. And all of those things you have to kind of think about, and it's a balance. And I spend a lot of time every year picking repertoire, a lot.
You've heard me talk about the wonderful Tuner Caddy product. Now introducing the Tuner Caddy Tuner TCT60M. Is a chromatic tuner that transposes for instruments in F, C, B flat, and E flat. Has a 6-foot clip-on microphone so they can tune from their seat, a built-in metronome to keep your tempos honest, and a bright, easy-to-read display so even the trumpet section can't miss it. Pair it with the Tuner Caddy and you have the Tuner Caddy system, a place for everything and everything in its place. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast with a roster of imaginative composers, including composers who have been featured on this podcast, such as Carol Britton Chambers, Laura Estes, and Tyler Arcari. Excelsior Music Publishing provides new music for concert band, jazz ensemble, solo and ensemble, as well as books and resources for all levels and occasions, including a large and festive selection of music for your fall, holiday, and Christmas concerts. Find your perfect next piece at excelsiamusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Just last week, I did 2 episodes actually with Nick Pierce. We did a grade 1-2 and then a grade 3-4, where it's basically all flex band music, where we kind of dive into, I don't know, it's like a dozen or so pieces that are all flex band in different versions for bands. So that whole like finding something that's right for your kids, I sometimes that's flex band, sometimes it's not. But if people haven't heard that, they should go back and check it out. Back to the conducting thing for a little bit. So like I always wondered what made somebody like a naturally good conductor as a band director and what didn't, right? So I've kind of settled on a couple things. Like, first of all, you have to be super musical to do it. And this is like even to have a shot at being a natural conductor, right? The other side of it is that the athletic thing, right? Like if somebody's kinesthetically aware, if they're good at throwing a ball, if they're good at tennis, whatever, combine those two things, they have a better shot. Now, the people who have to work harder at it often are the better conductors, right? Because they have to like intentionally think about that. So I'm trying to think about ways that people can improve, because you're right. Like we're in silos. Very rarely do you have somebody who can actually give you some conducting feedback. I think what I see a lot of people do is just taking videos of themselves when they conduct. Excuse me, while I get something out of my eye. And then just send it to a buddy, just send it to a friend and be like, hey, can you give me some feedback? Because we all conduct too high. A lot of us, especially those of us with raised band rooms, we all conduct with too much shoulder, not enough wrist, right? We don't show enough ictus. We conduct too big. Well, where does that come from? Well, our band drags. So we conduct bigger, which makes them slow down and makes them stop watching. So the whole like conducting less, conducting more effectively is definitely an art form. But I kind of circle back to make a recording of yourself, send it to somebody, get some feedback, send it to somebody else. It's hard to get conducting lessons in where we are. And I'm just going to keep going. Like so frequently, we don't even think about ourselves. I love that you're thinking about your conducting, but so often we go a week and we're like, I forget what shirt I wore, like there's just 1,000 things you're doing, let alone like, is my left hand pinky doing what I want it to do? I mean, there's all this that goes into that. So that conducting side of things is huge, but your students benefit greatly when they have a quality conductor in front of them.
Yeah. And you hit a point like in your teaching and you're conducting with a group where they are now functionally able to play a piece and they can play it without you there, right? You don't actually need to be there. Now, what can you do? What nuance can you give? How do I show them musically with my hands, with the tongue, what I want? And it's tricky. It's a hard thing to learn. So some of the things, I mean, I'm very similar to you. I will look at recordings of myself doing it. I will ask for feedback on that from people that I know. I have attended conducting symposiums. Some have been excellent, some not so much. It kind of depends. The other thing with the age group, right? Like I have a high school group that plays in the grade 3-ish level range. That's about where we live. And there are certain things, nuances that if I do there, it's not really, they're not going to notice. It's not necessarily that important for this level, like that you would want if you're conducting a high level professional recorder or a university level, that sort of thing. So it's just, I try to, another thing that I do is I often watch really good school conductors at that level. So I try to find a piece that I'm working on, find a bunch of recordings online and watch somebody conduct it well and kind of see what they're doing and try to mimic it, try to create like, If I find a section where I'm like, I want the kids to do this in this section, I need them to be more connected, I need them to be more, lyrical, whatever, I'm going to go find YouTube videos or videos online of people doing it, see what they do, and I'm going to experiment, try it, right? And it, depending on the level, like if you're working with a very beginner group, they need your ICTAs, they need time, they need these sorts of things. So it's all about the level of the kids, it's all about the group, and it's something that I became more aware of in the last few years, I would say, once I've gotten more comfortable in my teaching, that it's something I need to work on. So, yeah.
I also like to separate the rehearser and the conductor. Like if you had to choose one, I want my kids to have a great rehearser, to be able to rehearse them, to get the best quality we can get. Because I've seen people who are great conductors, quote unquote, but they don't reach the kids and they don't know how to rehearse the music. They just kind of show some great stuff. Well, it's like, well, we're not hearing what you're showing at all. And then there's people who we know who are fantastic rehearsers. And then they'll take literally a drumstick and just hold it like a turkey leg and just like wave it. I mean, if you can combine both of those things, I guess always lean towards the rehearsing side of things. I think we think about that more. Plus, I mean, I've been teaching 23 years. How long have you been teaching? About that?
Going into year 25.
All right. So like the last time I got a conducting lesson was 23 years ago. Like yeah. It's like the last time I got a tennis lesson. I mean, like we just get into our old habits. So we're giving so much to the kids. It's hard to kind of focus on ourselves. So yeah. I like that thought. And conducting in the car is a really nice thing. And like an exercise people can do is literally just take hold on, 2 hands on the wheel. So maybe you can't, but should you be using one hand only? Like just practice conducting more with your fingers and your wrist, more and more, like you're flicking, something water off the end of the baton or whatever. Because that is just clearer for students. I was just giving some feedback to one of my drum majors yesterday. Actually, we tend to move our elbows a lot. Like if people kind of conduct a little bit and then like you move your elbows backwards, like people tend to swing. That does zero for the people who are actually watching you. So kind of thinking your elbows equal to your body or a little bit head, brings your hands out in front, a little more effective for the kids too.
I remember I got some conducting. There's a festival that runs in Ontario where we can choose to get conducting feedback. It does not affect your mark, like it doesn't affect your standing, but you can choose to have an adjudicator give you feedback on your conducting. And one of the things that he said I thought was really connected with me was that something that may feel really good to you doesn't necessarily do anything for the kids. So if you're feeling it and you're moving and you're doing all these swaying and flowing motions that feel very musically good to you, they're not actually helping the kids at all. They're just making you feel more involved in that, which does have a purpose, but there are certain things that they need that you have to think about more about than less you in that. I thought that was really interesting because I do naturally move a lot. They said, that's great for you, but it's not actually helping that. Constant emotion all the time. Like they don't have anything that they can kind of focus on, and the small things get missed. So, all good.
So as in your sort of band director journey, I think we all kind of hit okay, we've been doing this a while now, what? And we keep getting better. We keep trying to get better with new students all the time. But there's also some like, I want to learn something new. I want to do something new. Is that where the composing thing kind of came from with you? Have you always like been a composer? I know you're mainly an upright bass player, right? Mm-hmm. Have you always been a composer and you just kind of started putting it out there? Or was it like, hey, after doing this for 15, 20 years, I kind of now want to start this side of things too with all my band director knowledge?
It's a combination of both, to be honest. So I've always created music, right? Most musicians create music. We're artists. We want to create stuff. And that wrote our own tunes. I played in a very successful independent R&B band in Toronto for many years, and we recorded, our own albums of individual music. Nothing was ever scored. We never wrote anything down, but the creating process I'd always done, and even early in my teaching, I did some arranging for jazz band. I did some basic kind of stuff. In university, I took jazz composition. It was one of the courses I took. It was pretty simple composition where you write melodies and chord changes. But that's always been there. And I kind of got the itch to get into this probably around 2019, 2020, where I said, like, I'd really like to explore this idea of maybe writing music. And of course, pandemic hit, which slowed the process down, even though we had lots of time in the pandemic. As you and I talked about in a past episode, I use that as a break. I use that as an opportunity to kind of step back from music for a while and focus on a bunch of other things. And then once I got back into it, got back into teaching and the world got back to normal around 2023, I said I wanted to do this. And it's funny, I teach, the school I teach at is an international baccalaureate school. So I don't know how familiar your listeners are with what's called the IB program. But the IB program is a worldwide school program that was based in Switzerland originally, and it was designed for like the children of diplomats who would travel around the world would get a standardized education no matter what country they were in. And the IB program um, teaches composition and creation as part of it. So it's basically like three tiers: analysis, creation, and composition, performance. So the idea is you should be analyzing scores, you should be analyzing recording, learning something from them, and then taking those and using them in terms of your own creating. So I was finding as I was these kids analysis and composition that I was seeing patterns. I was starting to recognize things in scores that people were doing. And I kind of had this crazy idea. And I said, I think I could do this. And in retrospect, it was a little crazy. It's a little, I don't want to say ignorant, but the equivalent I would describe it as is it's like you're a person who has built houses your whole lives. You've spent 25 years building houses. You read blueprint, know how to build a house, know what a house looks like, know how a house works, where the things go. But then actually creating it yourself and writing your own blueprint, you run into things you don't think about. With stuff that maybe weren't as naturally obvious to you. And it's like, oh, if I move this wall, then this plumbing has to move and this wiring has to move. And it's the same thing with composing. When I would start to get into the idea of writing, I just ran into things sometimes that I went, oh, well, I know what's supposed to work here, but I don't know how to make it work. And so the idea of it came from this. I've always wanted to create. Anybody who writes or creates anything, you want to put your voice in the world, you want to share your story basically with other people. That's why you create and why you write something. It's an outlet. It's the thing that you need to do. And so it just got to a point where I'm like, I want to try this. I want to jump in and do this and see what happens and use the skills I have. Like, as I said, I've built houses for 25 years. I should be able to build a house. It was harder than I thought. It was a lot harder than I thought. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's also incredibly rewarding. So that was kind of where it came from. Yes, having the training and having the background and knowing how music works, incredibly important. The other thing is I know how kids work. I always think about writing for what would it be for my band? What would happen in this situation? And so to have that perspective, I think is really, really important too. But I had a story I wanted to tell. The timing was right. And I wanted to jump in and give it a shot. And that's kind of where it came from. And you'll see, if you look at the composer world right now, there's a lot of educators. A lot of educators are writing music right now. And I think it's because we have that perspective.
I think there's also something to do about, like, if you're at a school and you're in, say, public education, I probably any institution, there are some limitations. The studies about what's happened to kids and their intellect and how they behave and all that socially since the cell phone. I think it's 2012. It kind of has decreased in things. I'm not putting down kids or anybody, but like those studies are out there. So we're trying to make great music with like kids who are functioning differently, right? But like when you're writing your own piece, you have complete control over what you're doing. You're not working with limitations that are sort of within society that you're trying to help with and all that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's something that comes to me as well.
I 100% agree. Like, one of the things I love about my school, for example, we have what they call like a cell phone policy where the kids are supposed to put, like, there's like these things at the front of the room that are numbered and the kids put their phone in it when they arrive at class and da da da. They don't have to do that in my room because they can't play a saxophone with their cell phone in their hand, right? The art of what we do takes them out of that comfort zone. And I think that's actually really important. And yeah, in terms of creating, part of why I wanted to write my own music is because I wanted to be like, hey, I think that this is going to work. I think that the kids will enjoy this. I have that perspective, which I think is helpful.
I think so. As we're talking about building houses, obviously that's building music, right? That's a metaphor. So if people are looking to start composing, they are qualified. I would say start if they haven't, just continue to study scores in a deep way of pieces you really like study those scores and why do you like them. And then other composition feedback I've gotten from people is write something small, just like write something small and get it played. And that's the advantage we have as band directors, right? We have a live group, hopefully, that you have access to. So write something that's 8 bars, get it in front of them played, and then take that feedback and go from there. As you're writing your pieces, do you have your kids play it kind of as guinea pigs?
It depends on the piece sometimes. So there's a few things I've done actually. When I first, it's funny, when I was first starting to write, somebody's like, "Oh, have you played this with your students yet?" I think one of the first things I wrote was like grade three chorus level, and they were at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, they're not gonna really be able to do it justice yet. Like they're still in the with a bunch of stuff, and there's gonna be rhythmic errors, blah, blah, blah. And my friend who teaches a university about an hour from here is like, "Well, we'll sight read it." Oh, okay. So I actually use that sometimes. I'll go to some of the community bands and have them read them. The lower grade level stuff that my senior kids can read through, I will use them for it. Um, it's a delicate balance too. Like there's two sides to this perspective that I've heard, and I don't think either is wrong. Working with your kids on your own music is really authentic for them, and they're going to learn from it. And that's I 100% agree with that statement. But the other side is you don't want to make it about you. The learning experience should be about them. So I don't often play my pieces with my kids in concert. I've done it once because they asked. But at the same time, I will use it in school sometimes. They will be guinea pigs to do some stuff because we sight read pretty much every few days, anyways, part of our teaching. So they can sight read something I give them, which is useful. Yeah.
What's your creative process? Are you like how you come up with the original material? Are you a piano guy? Are you all on computer?
I okay. So this is a kind of a complicated question. When I first started composing, I reached out to a lot of composers and asked them about their process. That was the question I asked. So friends that I knew, people I knew, I said, "How do you write?" And they all kind of said the process is different in every piece. And I thought, well, that's a terrible answer. It's actually pretty accurate. The process does change from piece to piece. Um, I have improved the way I approach things. So like I wish I could say I knew where creativity comes from, but I don't. Like it's there. I woke up yesterday morning with a melody in my head. I have had things pop in my head when I'm out riding my bike, and in the car. My phone is full of voice memos that I will sing into my phone. But in order for me to write, there are basically two things I need. I need the starting point, which is often a melody. It could be a motif, it could be a chord progression, and then I need a story because I need to know what I'm writing about. That's going to help me develop it and design it. So you talk about the idea of score study. So one of the things that I will do is if there's a piece I'm writing and I can think of like other pieces that I want it to sound like not I'm not trying to mimic the piece exactly. I'm not trying to like write a different version of a piece, but that from a sonic characteristic I would like it to sound like. I'm going to grab those scores and I'm going to take a look at how are those pieces orchestrated? Like what combinations do they use? So where are the low brass doubling this? Where is what is percussion doing in these sections? And that will help me in the orchestrating process because the hardest part and the part that I am still very new at and working at is orchestrating, is figuring out how to take this musical idea and develop it into a piece of music that makes sense. And there's all kinds of factors that go into that. Like you have to think about the groups that you're writing for. You've got to think about making sure that everybody has something. Like one of the great things in the concert band world in the last 20 years is we've really improved making sure that our low brass have interesting parts, our percussion has interesting parts, that for students, nobody's sitting there doing nothing, right? It needs to have interest for everybody. So those are things that I have to keep in mind when I'm orchestrating. The next stage in the process is something that I do that is incredibly time consuming, and I think composers with more experience wouldn't. But once I have all of the parts entered, I will duet in massive combinations. So I'm listening to combinations of instruments. I use the MIDI note performer, which is the AI based, and I listen and I go through and I listen to parts and I think, what does this work? Oh, would it be better if I did this? What about this? And the tricky part is, let's say I'm duetting the clarinets and I decide I'm going to change the second clarinet to this note because it's better voice leading. I then have to look through the score and find out where it's doubled. So if I doubled it in, I've got to make sure I move it in tenor sax and so on and so on. And to clean up the piece, to find any clashes, to find anything that doesn't sound right. Like if I'm listening to alto sax 2 and trumpet 1 and they just sound terrible together, there's probably something wrong. Like, and so I'll go through that process, and that takes a long time. It's a very long process. It's a piece of advice I got from Brian Balmages when I was initially getting some feedback from him. And I find it's really, really useful for me. And once I've done that, then I'll have a piece that's kind of there. At that point, I'm going to share it with somebody. I have a network of people that I can go to that are just composer friends, people I've met over the years that will listen to it. And even though I don't necessarily take everything they say, it's a different set of ears listening to things. They might hear something different. And there are people that you get to work with. Like I'll shout out Matt Neufeld. He and I have become really good friends. He's the person I send stuff to pretty much first once I get it to a stage where it's ready. And he can tell me things that he hears that are different. And there are certain things like that he would point out, like, oh, you don't have much motion in this section. It's kind of dead in this section. And I go, oh yeah, I didn't notice that, right? Like it's when you write something, you're gonna like it. It's yours. You're creating something that you have a connection to in some way, shape, or form. And if you're somebody who's not connected to it the way you are, they're going to hear different things than you are. And I think that that's a really useful thing. So I'll do that quite often. And then once I get it to a point where it's ready, I will try to hear it played, right? Community band, local university band, my own students actually hear it played, because there are things that I hear in the MIDI that sound very different in person. Like the perfect example, I wrote a piece that was for the community band in my city called the Royal City, and it was like a four-part little short movements about like landmarks in the city as well. And my own students asked to play a piece of mine. They're like, we really want to do another concert. So we did the final movement of this piece. When the adult band played it, it sounded totally fine. When the MIDI played it, it sounded totally fine. But when my students played it, at the very beginning of the piece, I had a really important part in my clarinet 2 and alto 2s. It didn't come through because generally with students, your second are not going to be as strong as your first sometimes, right? And I said, like, you guys need to play this louder, you need to play it louder, and they never quite got it there. So I actually rewrote it, and I put all the altos on the one part and all the clarinets on the other part, and it completely worked better for a set of students. And having that perspective of hearing it played brought that out, right? So it's funny, like when I first started writing music, I wanted to write a lot of music really fast. And I did. I wrote a lot of music really fast. And then I started to realize that to do this right is a long process. Like several months of work go into an individual piece of music. And sometimes I step away from it. Like sometimes I need to actually take a break from a piece and come back to it. But yeah, my process is pretty complicated and pretty long. And I think better writers who have way more experience than I do, who've been doing this for 20 some odd years, don't have to go through some of these steps. But for me, who's new to this and still learning, that duetting step is really important. And then constantly editing and revisiting ideas as I go is really important.
Love it. Let's listen to some of your pieces.
Yeah, man.
This is a grade 3 called "The Old Painted Door,"
Yeah.
a maritime lullaby. Tell us a little bit about this piece before we listen to it.
Okay, so I'll tell you how this piece was written and the kind of story goes with it. So um, this was written about a year ago, a little over a year ago. I had this conversation with a Canadian composer named Ken Lee Christopherson, who's a great Canadian composer. And Ken Lee and I were talking about the importance of writing a Canadian story, right? Adding music to the Canadian canon of music, right? To tell a Canadian perspective. So I was really wanting to write a Canadian piece. And I was thinking about like, what is the story I want to tell? And in 2022, my family and I traveled to the East Coast of Canada. I absolutely fell in love with it. It is stunning. It is just beautiful. The vibes are so different. Everything is smaller and more open. The people are so inviting. And I'm like, I want to somehow tell that story in music. And so going back to my 40th birthday, which is almost 10 years ago now, I recorded a jazz album. That was something that had been on my bucket list for many years, as I wanted to record a jazz album. So I recorded a jazz album for my 40th birthday, and I posted on social media saying I'd recorded this album. I only pressed like 50 CDs because it's kind of in this time period of like nobody buys CDs and digital and all this. So, but I made 50 CDs. So if anybody would want one, let me know. So I get a message from my friend Sarah Irwin. Sarah and I went to high school together, and she's a visual artist who lives on the east coast of Canada in a place called Peggy's Cove. And she's like, "Hey, I'd love a copy of your album." So I sent her a copy in the mail, and about 2 months later, I get a message back from her, and she's like, "Hey, I painted a painting while listening to your album, and it's this gorgeous painting. It's a tree out in the water, and it's on the back of a door. It's literally a full size door that she has painted with this on it." So when we traveled out to the east coast of Canada in 2022, we visited Peggy's Cove, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. If you're not familiar with it, you can Google and look at it, but it's got like it's a lighthouse that is in this fishing community on top of these rocks that over millions of years of the waves have been like almost rounded. It is absolutely visually stunning. And I just fell in love with that area. And afterwards, we went to visit Sarah because Sarah lives just outside Peggy's Cove. And I had a chance to see the door. We didn't buy it. So it was funny. We talked about buying it. The problem was we were traveling across Canada over a couple weeks span. We had our dog, we had all our stuff. We really didn't have room for it. And she actually had a buyer interested in it. And it has been sold. And I think that's actually kind of poetic that this door is out there on the East Coast existing somewhere on its own. And I thought, like, that's the perfect analogy for the story I'm trying to tell. I want to tell my love story to the East Coast of Canada, the people, the environment, the natural thing. And that was the perfect story to tell. So if you buy the piece, or if you see the piece online, if you look in the store, in the liner notes, there is a picture of the door. So there's a picture of Sarah and I together outside of her thing with the door. It's in black and white, so you can't see the colors. But if you do go to my website on the link, The Old Painted Door, the door is there. And that was the inspiration for this piece. In terms of writing it, it actually came to me when I was riding my bike. Very funny. I have a voice memo on my phone with the wind blowing and me slightly out of breath, singing the melodies that came to me. And I've been really lucky that over the years I've gotten to know Brian Ballmer very well. Brian and I have become good friends. I think we're exactly the same age. When he was first getting his career set, I was playing a lot of music, and we got to know each other just through social media and reading sessions and different events. And so when I first started writing, he said to me that I could send him stuff at any time, and that he would always give me feedback. He said it might take time, but he would do that. And so when I sent him The Old Painted Door, I never imagined he was going to publish it. That was never the intention. And then when he said he did, it was just such he was interested in it. It was such a cool moment. It was a really uh, affirming moment, like because at that point I had already had the piece with Randall Standridge picked up for publishing, and I kind of in my head was like, I don't want to be like a one hit wonder. Like, I don't want to be somebody who puts out a piece and never puts anything else out. So when this finally happened, and I had now a second piece, and somebody who had been an incredible mentor to me was interested in publishing it. It was really cool, and I also knew the Alfred network. It would allow me to get music out to people, and that's always my goal. I want to tell this story to somebody. So it was just the perfect storm of things. It was the right story I wanted to tell. The timing was right. I was at a right stage in my writing where I was starting to be able to understand how to write, and it just came together beautifully. And yeah, I'm super proud of this piece, and it's a piece that I think that people will really like. So
All right, let's take a listen. Here's The Old Painted Door. Okay, so that piece is a grade 3. Next piece we're going to listen to is a piece called "The Beauty Within," which is a grade you have listed as a 2.5. Tell us about this piece.
Yeah. So this is a piece that was actually the first piece that I got picked up for publishing. It was probably about the fourth or fifth piece that I wrote. I wrote it sick in bed, actually, interestingly enough. But I had a concept in mind of what I wanted for this piece. So um, I grew up in a pretty spiritual family. Like my upbringing was a Christian upbringing, but I'm not necessarily a practicing Christian right now. But I'm a spiritual person, and one of the things that I read about a lot and I think about a lot is Eastern philosophy and some of these ideas that they have. And there's a wonderful concept of this idea of being present in the moment. Is that your body can only live in the present, but your mind can live in the past, future, or present. And a lot of people's minds live in the future or the past. And this concept of being in that moment, and when you do that, you start to discover that everything you actually need, you already have. And that a lot of, I use the quote, I believe it's in the liner notes too, from the movie The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy says, if I ever go searching for my heart's desire, I need look no further than my own backyard, because if it's not there, I never really lost it to begin with. And I think that concept, that there is a light and a beautiful idea that lives within each of us. It's already there. We just forget it's there sometimes. And that's kind of the story I wanted to do. I wanted to tell a story that I felt was important for kids to know. This concept that you are important. There is something that lives within you that is beautiful and is there all the time. We just forget sometimes that it's there. From a technical standpoint, uh, what we talked earlier about like writing to our students. When I was writing this, I had two spectacular euphonium players, just absolutely wonderful euphonium players.
Mm.
And I love the sound of euphonium, the beautiful mid-range kind of warmth that it has. So the piece was written to feature euphonium, and it does start with a euphonium solo, and then it's doubled in tenor sax. Um, and as I wrote it, I originally wanted to write it as a grade two. And the more that I started to get into it, I realized it wasn't going to be a grade two. So that's why I kind of ended up at the 2.5 level, because it's got a few sort of more trickier range things, particularly in low brass near the end. And I also was kind of trying to think about grade two lyrical pieces that I really liked. So I was picked two that I love, which is Rippling Watercolors, the Ball Mages, and a standard piece called Where Words End. And so I was kind of looking at elements that were in both of those and trying to find what sort of things were they doing. Like I had the melody, I had the structure pretty much in mind, but I used that as a guide, and it ended up pretty, you know, very beautiful and gentle, and it's quite exposed at points, which makes it a little bit trickier on the grade two side, which I think why it kind of ended up as a 2.5. And you know, this is a piece that I've had the chance to hear play a couple times now, and it's I think it's just a really cool message for kids. It's a great challenge at a grade two level, and you know, it's just something that I'm happy to have out there. It's a piece I'm very happy with.
And just a reminder, lyric music is always harder, especially for young students. So even if your band is a grade 3 or 4 band, doing a grade 2.5 lyric piece always is going to provide some great challenge and great opportunities.
And for us too, up here in Canada, the grade levels are a little different. What is a 2.5 in the US would be closer to a 3 in Canada. So I'm very excited that some of my pieces have been put onto the Ontario provincial list and the Canadian national list. They're not required pieces, but they're recommended pieces, which is cool. So this one actually appears on their grade 3 list. So even though it is a 2.5.
Very cool. All right, let's check it out. Here's The Beauty Within. two more pieces we're going to listen to. These are both 0.5, so, or beginning band, so to speak, pieces. This one's called Gentle Snow. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So, bit of a story to this piece. When I first started writing as a Canadian writer, I wanted to get music out. And the best way to do that, if you're a Canadian composer, is through a company called Eighth Note. Eighth Note is Canada's only publisher, and they have a mandate to publish Canadian works. They are distributed in the US through Alfred. The only thing is that they don't have ePrint, unfortunately. It is a smaller company. It literally, the editor is a guy named Dave Bartlett, and it runs out of his house. But it was an opportunity for me to try to get some work out to people. I knew that if I wanted to write as a Canadian, I needed to get some work with Eighth Note. So I actually went to a reading session that Eighth Note was running for beginning band. So Dave and a guy named Ryan Meebor, who is a writer for them, who writes a lot of music, were running the session. And basically the whole session was halves, ones, and 1.5s. So after the session, I talked to Dave and introduced myself, told him what I was doing. Ryan and I had already been collaborating and working. Ryan had helped me edit a few things. And I asked him, what do you want? Like, what kind of music are you interested in? He goes, I want halves and ones. He said, that's what sells. And he said, we will release grade 2s and 3s. That's fine. But he said, the people who are playing those levels of music are going to tend to play the bigger names. They're going to play the bigger pieces. He said, we want to market to these people who are first writing. And Dave and his wife, who run the company, are both music educators, and they come from that background. They understand sort of what it is. So we had a long conversation about what kind of halves he was looking for, because when you're at these lower grade levels, halves and ones, 1.5s, all those kind of things are different. There's a big difference between certain grade ones, right? Like if I give you 2 grade 1s off the top of my head. So let's go with After the Rain by Matt Neufeld. So great piece, pretty much is quarter notes, whole notes, and half notes. Pretty dense in its orchestration, really cleverly written piece, but quite attainable for a group of students when they're first beginning to play. Then if I look at a piece like In the Wake of Spring, which is a lovely grade 1, beautiful, beautiful piece of music. It is full of eighth note runs. It has exposed passages in it. It actually has some offbeat syncopated rhythms in the alto saxophone, but those are both technically grade 1, right? And there's a big technical difference between those two pieces. And you see that a lot at these lower levels. So what Dave asked for when I talked to him at Eighth Note, he goes, I want you to think of something that is a step above the method book. Think about what would be a first piece that kids would want to play, right? And so Gentle Snow came from that concept. I went into this saying, I want to write a piece that would be a first lyrical piece that a group would ever play. And writing lyrically at a half is almost impossible. So you can't write truly lyrically at a half. You have to be a little bit clever in how you put things together. It was a real challenge. Like, I enjoy writing at this level, but people would think like writing a grade 4 or 5 is the hardest thing to do. No, writing a grade half is way harder. I'll use another analogy. If you ever go to like one of these like Roadhouse restaurants with your kids and they have like the tablecloth that you can draw on and they give you 3 crayons and you have to make a drawing with 3 crayons, that's what it's like writing a grade half. You have 3 crayons. You have to make the most interesting drawing you can make with these 3 crayons, right? You only have a limited range, right? And perfect example. I'm going to do a little music theory moment here for you. You write in B flat, you can only use the first 6 notes of the scale for most instrumentation, right? Well, as soon as you get to the dominant chord, you need the third of that dominant chord. That is the 7th degree of the scale. So the only way you can do that is that only certain instruments can go below and play those, right? There's only certain places you can put those notes in. So it becomes really a challenge to write at this level because you are so within this box. So that's what Gentle Snow was designed to be. The melody's very simple and repetitive. It is built on a couple repeated motifs. The orchestration is designed to give moments for brass and woodwind without them being too exposed. Um, Trying to make sure that everybody has their moments, but everything is playable too. And it ended up working out really, really well. And it was something that I was able to use with my students this year. I had a group of grade nines that were probably one of the weaker groups I've ever had. Wonderfully nice kids, but just from a developmental standpoint, we're not strong. And I'm trying to program for our winter concert. And I'm like, I need something that's not a little fanfare marchy type thing. And so we were able to use this, which was really nice.
Hmm.
The other thing that was cool is, along with the old painted door, this was picked by J.W. Pepper for their editor's choice, which was a shock to me. I was really surprised because Canadian music and Eighth Note is a very, very small company. And so, with something like Alfred, there's a much higher chance of it ending up on an editor's choice list. But this was actually selected to the editor's choice list, which was cool because I think as a lyrical half, it works. It actually works really well, and it's quite playable. It's another one I've had a chance to hear a couple of groups play. A couple of the local elementary schools in my town played it. I heard very different versions of it, but it was really neat. It was a really cool thing. So it is designed to be your first half, the first half level lyrical that you would play.
Great. Let's listen to it. Here's Gentle Snow. All right, Dan, thanks for being here again, as always. Before we listen to the final piece here, do you have anything new coming up? Any announcements you want to make?
I do. So there's some things that are in the works that I can't talk about yet. There's kind of an unwritten rule in the publishing world that until the ink is dry on the contract, you don't kind of tell anybody or say anything. And so I will say that I'm in the editing stage with some new stuff with a couple of the companies that I work with that will be coming out in 2026. But the one thing that's cool that I can announce, and this is awesome, perfect place to do it because you guys are affiliated with Excelsior Music.
Mhm.
I'm going to be part of the Excelsior Music composer team moving forward. I've got a lyrical grade 2 called A Glimmer of Hope, which is going to be included in the Wingert Jones 2026 catalog that will be coming out in the spring. So I've, over the last couple of weeks, been working with Tyler, their editor, and it's all set and done and ready to go. And it's super exciting. I mean, it's such a surreal thing for me to have started this as a passion project, as something that was fun to do, and now to have pieces out with 4 different companies, the 3 largest in the U.S., and just the way I've been embraced by everybody, and this is awesome. So I'm super excited to be working with the Excelsior team and have that piece coming out. And it's a piece that I really, really enjoy. I wrote it very quickly. It was something that I wrote. There were some of my students that were kind of having a rough time. They were going through some things, and I was talking to them in class about this idea of hope, about, no matter how bad things are, there's always going to be a light at the end of this kind of tunnel, this idea of hope. And all of a sudden, this melody popped in my head, and I'm teaching. I'm in the middle of teaching. And so I said to them, I'm like, look, go work on this in the practice rooms. I gave them a little assignment to work at, and I jumped on the piano, just had a piece of manuscript paper and hacked this thing out. And 2 days later, it was almost done as it is now. It's one of the quickest things that I wrote. It's designed to be simple. It's designed to be beautiful. It's designed to be inspirational. And it's a piece that I really, really like. And I'm really excited to be working with Excelsia on this. So yeah, that's sort of the big new announcement. There are other things in the work that probably by the time this airs will be done. But yeah, things are looking real good moving forward.
Beautiful. Love that. Congratulations. That's such great news. Let's listen to your final piece here that we have called Above the Clouds. It's another grade 0.5.
Yep. And this, similar to what we talked about with the other piece, this was designed to be a step above the method book. In fact, probably easier than Gentle Snow was. This is as easy a 0.5 as you can get. And it's a fanfare style piece. It's based on like a lot of stepwise motion, a lot of very like simple motifs that can repeat. And, you know, it gives a chance to students to play a piece that is something that they can pick up pretty quickly, and then sort of develop some skills from, because it does explore, there's a couple sections with some dynamic changes. It explores some basic slurring ideas. It has some tenuto markings. It has a few staccato kind of markings. So it introduces a bunch of elements that students would need to know, but in an attainable way. The trick with writing fanfares at this level is that they all end up sounding very similar because you have a limited palette, right? You can't do a whole lot of super creative things. So from a standpoint of like, is it going to be the most original piece of music you've ever heard? No, like because of the limitations of what you're able to do and what it is designed to do. I find that most 0.5 fanfares sound like Star Splitter fanfare.
Yeah.
They sound very similar because that is what a fanfare at this level can sound like. You don't have a whole lot of other options. But again, I think it works from an educational standpoint. It's quite playable. And one of the things that's been cool is I've actually had a chance to not only hear this, but work with a couple schools on this. It was really neat. They invited me in to come in. Two very different experiences because the schools were at very different levels with the piece. But it was really neat to be able, from a composer standpoint, to teach them and talk to them about some of the ideas in this piece and what it was designed to do and what it was designed to be. And so it, you know, I think it works really well. It's a great 0.5 and something that's fun for the kids to play as a first piece.
Love it. Dan, thanks so much for making the time. Enjoy the rest of your summer. As this comes out, it's pushing Thanksgiving time. So I'm not sure that was seasonally appropriate, but it works for now. Everybody check it out. Here's Above the Clouds. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.